So we can start with the universal prayer for teacher and student. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karavavai Tejasvinavaditam Astoma Viddhishavahai. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. May that one protect us both, teacher and student. May we work together with great energy and vigor. May our studies be nourished and protected. May we get some kind of illumination from our studies. May we not unnecessarily argue or cabal with each other. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. So I know we have a theme for this evening, but there was a question which was, does food affect our concentration, meaning the type of food that we eat? And of course, we have to extend that question to the quantity of food also. So we can easily dispense with the quantity because that's a very obvious thing. But the quantity is a relative term. See, according to the yogis, the quantity that you eat and that fills the stomach is based on the size of the stomach we assume to be the size of two palms of your hands extended. The open palm held out, and the solid food, bearing in mind that mastication, what have you, consolidation, concentration will bring it into, will take out all the air pockets of the food that you eat. And half of your stomach will be filled with this. And the other half of your stomach will be filled with air and water in equal proportions according to the volume that is remaining. And the water helps to, add to the digestive capacity. Don't forget, it's hydrochloric acid that's sitting in the stomach that is responsible for converting the proteins by stimulating pepsin. And that breaks down proteins, and it also acts as a protective mechanism against any foreign bodies. A powerful digestive with powerful acid. You can say swimming pool acid is what they put in swimming pools, hydrochloric acid. And then, of course, the carbohydrates come in and they get also digested in the small intestine. There's a whole factory that takes place in the digestive system. And we take it for granted. We don't normally think about it. But it begins with the crushing section in the mouth. And on mines, they have the same kinds of system. They bring the ore up from the ground, and it has to be broken down in what are called jaw crushers, a rotating axle, which then opens and closes literally two metal jaws. And they crush the ore down to a certain size, and then it has to go to a rotating crusher that crushes it down even more, let's say to about something like an inch or something, from something that is a huge boulder down to that size. And so this is equivalent to what we're doing in masticating the food by releasing enzymes and then saliva and so on, and breaking the food down. But saliva is also a germ killer. So along with the quantity that is being fed in, quality control is always there as well. It's like a whole processing plant. And that gets eased along through swallowing. You can compare it to some kind of conveyor belt that is going to deliver all of this raw material to a massive, another kind of crushing system where chemicals are added. And it's broken down even further And then we have a digestive system that acts as an absorbent of some materials. All of this requires water in the system. It requires chemicals. It requires certain local factories that produce these, that have these catalytic effect on the breakdown of these food. And to cut a long story short, it's carried on conveyors or sluices, pipelines, just like any factory, and delivered at the local level, called a cell, and there broken down to an electrochemical exchange. And you can imagine like a truck of trains where something is offloaded and all the waste product is put back into the system, which carries it around to the waste disposal area and dumped away through the lymphatic system and through all the waste management of the body. Now, all of this I've described in mechanical terms, but we can also describe it as divine grace. It's divine grace that moves all of this. And another description, short word for that would be life. The question of what is life is an age-old question. Many philosophers have pondered on it because we know it exists. Everybody knows and is aware I'm living. And every creature, whether it's a eukaryotic cell or a prokaryotic cell, wants to survive. Prokaryotic means there's no kernel, there's no internal restriction there, there's no nucleus in the cell, but it still operates. The more sophisticated variety is there's a nucleus of cell, an internal factory that acts as a replicator and so on. It doesn't go through meiosis. There's an internal factory, more sophisticated. More sophisticated than that is a cooperative that says, may one cell join with another in a joint effort. But it's driven by a will to survive, which we can call life. And we know what it is. Just take a spider, for example. A spider weaves a web. You can poke the web, it just bounces. But if you take a stick and start approaching the spider, it reacts. It runs into a corner. So one is no doubt sentient and living, and the other is no doubt just material, and we can bounce it around, and we can classify it as insentient. And in this way, we can say it is life, until we really look at it more closely. Where did the web come from? It came from the spider. Now, this analogy is used by the Upanishads, like a spider weaving a web from itself. It doesn't require a Mrs. Spider to do it. And so, when we drill everything down to its essence, we have some absolute entity that at some point means a time has to emerge from it. Space has to emerge from it. The basic fabric of the universe being there, the rest will come. And so to understand what is life, we have to trace back in a devolutionary way, the evolution of where we find it today. And we find it in classifications of sentient, insentient objects. But you see, it was Jagadish Chandra Bose, who was championed by our sister Nivedita, who made this exploration about the sentiency in plants. And the idea today that we can affect plants through producing vibrations in the air that to the human ear we call music. The plants respond. A fetus in a mother's womb responds to these external vibrations that we call sound or music or noise, whatever it is. What it is all comes from a sense of vibration. And the ancient yogis would have reduced everything to this vibration. In other words, they were all string theorists. They all felt other dimensions are there, and maybe there are oscillations and vibrations that we can call waves or vrittis. And in the mind, they just happen to be called thoughts and feelings, memories, classifications of brain waves, where the brain is passive one moment, active the next. Where in deep sleep, there is a quiescence, and where we can induce that quiescence through such things as anesthesia. We can, but we don't know how it works. That's the interesting thing. We know how we can use it, but how does it work? So there's some fundamental questions when we talk about life. Not so long ago, in the category of the insentience was a virus, because a virus relies on a host. It attaches to a bacteria, it's called a bacteriophage in that case, or some other cell of the body, and we've experienced it locally here as this pandemic of COVID. Now, if you have an interview with a virus, how do you know how to attach to a host? How do you know how to invade the body? How do you know how to adapt when we try and deal with you? Well, the virus will simply say, well, it's built into me, and it's an internal knowledge that I have. And so when we explore these questions, we have to then ask, where does this knowledge come from? It must be somewhere inherent. And when we talk about life, we are taking this inherency as a component of this single thing that we call life, the thing that makes something living. Where we all experience in a self-conscious way, I exist, I am alive. Nobody says I'm dead, everybody says I'm alive. And even when you sleep, you still know somehow you're alive. That's good news. And when we know, in contrast to that, what is dead and what is death, we know that also. It goes into that category of insentiency. But it's only because we don't analyze it more. Because it then becomes a living, decomposing thing where maggots and so on get their life from. And it's a never-ending cycle. So we don't have any origins to it. And we don't have any causality to it, because we only have an observation of things changing all the time. And this is a component that we call life. So what we can say is life is something that changes. Now, when we talk about food, we're talking about a component of a cycle, because in order to eat food, there has to be destruction. You may say you're a vegetarian. There's some people say, I'm a vegetarian because I hate plants. So this is my revenge on plants. See? So the plant has to sacrifice its life in order to be transformed into your ADP, ATP, this exchange of energy, this transference of raw material containing potential energy with all the reactive manufacturing processes in the body to come out as speech, evidence of life, a heartbeat, a renewal of cells, the mechanism of breathing, the complex and intricate neurofirings of the brain. All of this is from food. So just from a physiological point of view, the quality of food should be good, because yes, the body knows how to cope with all kinds of material. Using the mining analogy, where raw ore is brought to a crusher and then a processing plant and so on, and ultimately an extraction of something that is present or precious, equivalent to nutrition, and that which is not precious is discarded as waste products. It's exactly the same process in the human body. But the difference is, machines are insentient, and our own machinery is infused with divine glory and is an echo, an expression, a manifestation of its origin, namely divine grace that we can tune into at any given moment, starting from any point of glory presented in our experience, to trace it back to its origins. And that is why if we want food to be nutritious and assist in our concentration, to make the mind astute and acute, the quality of food has to be selected. And the attitude toward this food has to be selected. What is pure food in this sense? From a spiritual aspirant's angle, pure food is pure intention. What is impure food is just carelessly putting something on the plate. And if we really want impure food, we make food with an internal curse. I have to make this food, but it's a bind. I had to get up early and prepare this. I had to get the ingredients. I wish I was home by a nice warm fire. And so let me rush this food out. Let me store it carelessly and put it on a plate and make sure that I make money from it if I'm a restaurant. And the more I push out, the better it is. And when the customer receives it so nicely presented on a plate, they forget that somebody in the kitchen may have sneezed on it. They forget that this food is presented in such a way that the behind scenes are left out. You can see programs these days of the process where in the kitchen, it's all, at the disorganized kitchen, it's all shouting and high pressure to churn out quantities of food at quality that will provide a good reputation to the restaurant. But is there any thought going in? In some restaurants, I think there is. Where the quality is there for the delivery of a valued client, a valued customer. We are the valued customer when we eat our food. When we eat our food, there should be the quality that where purity is inserted, purity of intention. Love. The best ingredient there for food is love. Make your food with love. Is it only food? No. All your activities done with love. All your activities should be done with a loving attitude, a caring attitude, an attitude that is tuned into the glory of the divine, so that there are mechanisms to assist us in doing this. Feeling that we are co-cooking with our loving divine companion. Repeating lovingly the name, that's called repetition of a mantra, even as we cook. Because you see, there are times when we cook or do routine activities that don't require the fullness of concentration, where the mind is free to wander anywhere. And we have to bring it back and bring it to the unit activity that we're doing, and insert this ingredient of divine love. Not just love, divine love. A feeling of the current presence of the divine in all our activities, and all the resources that are being used, and all the ingredients that are being used. And that is why traditionally when we eat, we repeat that prayer extracted from the Bhagavad Gita, that everything is Brahman, everything is the Supreme, everything is divine, and everything is a sacrifice. Eating is a sacrifice. Something is lost and something is gained. This is sacrifice. And so when we feed the food in, we have an internal digestive system which we call digestive fire, Vaishvanara. It is the fire derived from the body's internal temperature, which in turn is made from food. So food becomes the eternal cycle. How did we get this universe? From food, says the Upanishads. And this food and the energy combined create this universe. So when we talk of food, we probably have to trace it way back to what the Upanishads mean. The raw materials that are there. The raw food and the thing that is digesting it, we call this prana. Akasha and prana, or simply we can put it in the Prajna Upanishad, it terms it as fire. As food. Food means matter and energy combined. And when we digest food at our human level, We're simply replicating what the whole universe is doing. Supposing you have this in mind when you prepare food and when you eat it, what a wonderful, marvelous attunement to the glory of the divine that would be. How elevating the mind would be. So, the quality is not the ingredient quality. The quality is the insertion of the intention and the loving insertion that is there. Does food promote concentration? Yes, if it's the right food, because you started off with concentration, not with food. You took the ingredients, you applied concentration, loving attitude, and you made food that was then sattvic, full of purity. It had nothing to do with the purity associated with hygiene. Now, of course, hygiene is also necessary, but that's part and parcel of it. Why should we make food hygienic? It's only for this fundamental feeling of love that gets expressed. This higher quality. May everything be absolutely pure. May there be no ignorance inserted. May there be no blemish inserted. May it all be of the highest quality in terms of our intention put into it. That's why maybe a mother's food, be it, the image of the Italian mother, the Irish mother, the Indian mother, come on, my child, eat, eat, eat. And even though our stomach is full, no, have some more, have some more. They're worried. But what a wonderful motherly intention goes into that. Actually, the whole of spiritual life starts off with food. And that's equivalent to sacrifice. Things are sacrificed. So, what is that whole action of digestion from the beginning, from the insertion of the food, to each stage of the manufacturing process, to the delivery of energy? It all depends on food, but we can put it as it is this source expressed in all these different ways. And that is why that source, that divine absolute, that divine presence and essence is the offering. It is the ingredient that is put into it in the form of ghee, say, and other things. It is the fire itself, the digestive fire itself. It is the hand that offers it into the sacrificial fire. And as people ask me, do you like ice cream? Well, yes, I do like ice cream, but I have to make sure that I'm not affecting Vaishvana, the Lord of the universe, who's digesting my food. If I really have love for that, I'll take it quite literally. And I'll say, Lord, I don't want to inconvenience you. Put cold stuff in me. And then you have to take the trouble of readjusting the temperature of the internal furnace and converting that. Why should I give you all this trouble? And after all, the body is designed so that the temperature of food that you put in, food and drink that you put into the system itself is 38 degrees and odd. So why should I trouble that Lord of the universe, Lord of Dharma, Lord of harmony, Lord of balance, that is looking after my instrument from inside and making me useful for his work? Why should I inconvenience the poor fellow by putting cold in my system? So if I do take ice cream, I have to take hot water after it. But generally I won't take it. And the effect is immediate if you're sensitive to it, because the mucus lining starts flowing. Because the ice cream, apart from anything else, is made from, well, fats and carbohydrates and so on. We know that fats and sugars combined create obesity when done in experimental format with rats. That's well understood. And it becomes addictive also. We leave this aside. We can be nutritionally sensible in what we eat, but on the basis for a spiritual aspirant of sattvic food. Make sure everything is infused with the highest, noblest ideas, then every cell of the body will pick it up, because the other side of it will also be true. If I'm eating carelessly, thinking of all the people who scandalized against me, carelessly thinking, I am rejected, then the stomach will say, this food is coming in, and my master says, on the menu today is rejection. I reject this food, and I get indigestion or even vomiting. And the body is only obeying my thought, because every thought that we have is conveyed to every single cell of the body immediately. Every single cell of the body will vibrate with all my thoughts and intentions. And if I underline it with unhappy thoughts, with thoughts which are egoistic, with poor me, instead of what a glory, then every single cell of the body will be dragged down. And that dragging down culminates in a lack of ease in the body, which we call disease. So that's where it begins. Then, what is the type of food that we feed in, apart from what I've just mentioned? What would be sattvic? Each individual would have their own digestive formula. And if you're sensitive enough, you'll know, this food suits me, this one doesn't. There's no general formula. We have to understand from our own experience. And that means we have to be aware of the body and the bodily functions and the body's sensitivities and what works and what doesn't, what clogs up the machine and what the machine can deal with easily. So that also is necessary. Now, of course, Krishna gives us some few guidelines in the Bhagavad Gita in terms of the 17th chapter, what is sattvic food, what is rajasic food, what is liked by the sattvic, what is liked by the rajasic, what is liked by the tamasic. In other words, what food produces a sense of lethargy and laziness. What foods produce, generally speaking, high sense of activity and a disturbance in the digestive system, but makes us temperamentally rajasic. Of course, common sense dictates you sit down for meditation and you have some difficulty produced by food, poor digestion, and most diseases like that. Naturally, you'll be concentrating on your arthritic knee. So there's a very practical reason why the types of food and their resultant effects on the body will affect concentration. We know that in the Chandogya Upanishad, a student is asked, please, to desist from food, to fast, to repeat a number of things, and then after fasting, please repeat them again, and they struggle because they've lost their memory, because food is necessary for thinking, for the operation of the brain, the mechanical operation of the brain. The brain is nothing more than yesterday's food. And every single part of the body is nothing more than yesterday's bananas and milk, or whatever else you ate. And the Taittiriya Upanishad then says, well, you think there's one body, but it's actually like Russian dolls. There's one inside one, and the outer layer is made from food. Annamaya kosha, it's called. That sheath that is made just from material food that you feed in. You are what you eat. You've heard that phrase. And the next level, beyond the energetic level, is you are what you think. Whatever you think comes to you, not only from the outside, because thought acts as a kind of suction, sucking in people, places, and events, and constructing scenes that become your environment. But your internal environment is affected first. And we know through the study of epigenetics that a thought that mobilizes the cell has a sensitivity of selection and a very complex mechanism, filtration mechanisms, to deliver what the cell requires and to bring out on the outside as a reaction, the reaction. And this inner reaction and outer reaction, this input, this output, and the process in between is covered by a scientific subject called epigenetics. That is, that we can control the environment, or the response to the environment produces a certain behavioral aspect in the nucleus of the cell that affects the manufacturing capacity and the behavioral capacity of the internal architect called DNA. With 100,000 coded messages, most of which we don't use, it's fixed. But what can modify it is the capacity to switch on and switch off certain things, certain of the behavioral characteristics of the chromosomes within the DNA. Yes, we can do it. Thinking makes itself, makes it happen. It affects the chemical composition of the body. It affects the metabolism of the body. It affects every single aspect. And how frequently do we think? More or less every second. When we take those seconds and say, let us make a train toward a certain destination, let us do it systematically, scientifically. This is called concentration, taking our thoughts and concentrating. What disturbs it? Indigestion disturbs it. Wrong food disturbs it. The lack of sattvic food disturbs it. Let us try to find out what these three varieties of foods will be. And these are very, very brief summary understandings of the three kinds of food. Ayuha sattva, see, balarogya sukha priti vivardhanam. Food that promotes what? See, vivardhanaha, vitality. Let's deal with that first. Sometimes you just don't feel like moving. Sometimes you just have no energy. Sometimes you may feel in the day that there are moments of energetic elations and depressions, maybe because of biorhythms or eating habits. You run out of energy. You may run out of sugar or something, because the whole body runs on sugar. I don't mean sugar in the sugar granules that you get in a packet and is refined to death. I don't mean that kind of sugar. I mean sugars. The whole system, energetic system, is run on the broken down final manufacturing essence of sugars. So these sugars are there and they give you vitality, and you know that if you can top your energy levels up with something that is sugary, and every person can sensitively monitor, how alive am I feeling? Do I have this feeling of energetic depletion? Oh, maybe I didn't eat. I haven't eaten for several hours. Those who are diabetic have a kind of sensitivity. Their insulin level goes, that's the problem. And they know they're more sensitive. So there's food, not just food that gives us energy, but the food that actually promotes vitality, that promotes energy, that gives you strength, that makes you strong. Food that promotes health. And in doing that, elevates the mind to a state of joy and cheerfulness. These are foods that are appetizing because nature has provided us with that. Every creature knows instinctively what to eat. They see something and they know this is the food I have to eat. We don't look at bamboo and say how delicious. We know we cannot break it down. We don't look at grass as a cow looks at, that has 4 opportunities to digest, ruminates on it. It goes into 4 stomachs. We don't have that capacity. There's a certain type of food that we are designed to digest from the grinding operation of the teeth with all the insertion of the enzymes that go with it to break that down, the chemicals that break it down. We have a certain intestinal format that knows what food is digestible and what is not, what food can be quickly transferred and translated into energy. And I suppose there's a rule of thumb that we could use, a sensible rule of thumb. Anything that in its natural state would be appealing to all the senses, it seems to me, will be food that promotes vitality and energy and so on. And in doing that, don't you think concentration will also be affected? So let us see again. Food that promotes vitality, energy. Vitality and energy are seen to be different in this sense. Because, you see, vitality, I'm alive, I feel enthusiastic. And energy, yes, physically, I have a lot of energy. I know I have a resource. Supposing a person runs a marathon, they know through practice that they have to top up with an energy drink or something like that. Somebody once joked with me, said, I'm changing my energy supplier tomorrow. I'm thinking electricity or something. He says, I'm changing it from Lucozade to Red Bull. Energy drinks that are on the market. Anyway, the people see, okay, I need some energy. They sometimes use caffeine, they sometimes use other sugars or other things. These are short-term things that provide us short-term energy. So should we, as spiritual practitioners dedicated to a goal, not have this beautiful food, this resource supplied by the divine, with the mechanism corresponding to that supplied by the divine, with the inner knowledge of knowing how to control things in terms of what we should eat, what we shouldn't eat, what is good for us individually, and what is not. So strength is necessary, and strength, physical strength, mental strength. Imagine now, if you have a will and a desire and a natural inclination to sit in meditation, concentration, for hours together, does it require physical strength? Yes. Does it require a healthy body? Yes. Otherwise, our mind gets diverted. My arthritic knee, my paining joint. This is why part of Patanjali's Yoga Sutras will have an eightfold process that doesn't start with meditation. It starts with moral training. And it starts then with purification, physical and mental, and developing the will, we call it tapasya. But then asana, meaning, is your body equipped to be able to sit without any physical distraction and meditate? Or will you sit there with indigestion, belching, or something of that nature? And so joy and cheerfulness, which are appetizing. We're not saying eat food. I've seen some people with some liquid green stuff in the morning, an energy drink of some kind made from combined vitamins, and they, put it through a food processor in the morning. And when they drink it, you can see their faces like the gargoyles of Notre Dame. They can't stand it, and yet it's good for me, so I'm drinking it. So these foods must be appetizing. Why? Because if it's appetizing at the tongue level, at the taste level, then the whole body will enjoy it. Because we are designed like that, we enjoy the food which is appetizing to us, not necessarily to other creatures. And soothing to the body, soothing, nourishing, and agreeable. And we have enough information in this day and age about nutrition to know what is nourishing, what is agreeable. And it is liked by those people who are sattvika because it produces the necessary physical environment for sattva. Now, conversely, food that is excessively bitter, see, Katvanmala Avanatya Yusna, food that is excessively bitter, that is sour, that is raksha, that is salty and hot and pungent and dry and burning. These are liked by those of a Rajasaka temperament. We have nothing against Rajasaka people, Satvika people, Tamasic people, but they're doing it to themselves. See, don't blame somebody else. Don't blame the chef. Don't blame this. You have the power to select the food that you want that promotes the best condition for concentration. So let us see, excessively bitter. We're not saying don't have bitter things, but things which are over the top, that are naturally excessive in these qualities, that are sour. In other words, foods that we have learned to develop a taste for in the culinary sense, that are salty. Salt, as we know, along with sugar, is poisonous. That is hot, that is pungent, is dry and burning. You know, there are some people who have a taste for, let's say, hot Oriental food, and it's not their culture, and you say, how do you like it? And they say, oh, the hotter the better. I need to sweat. I need my eyes to water. I need to feel the burning sensation in my stomach. Somehow, some people have developed a liking for that. And some people have developed such a habit from childhood. It doesn't mean anything. It's all very relative. But the purport is the same. Something that is an irritant, you would tend to avoid. Something that creates mucus, you'd intend to avoid. Something that affects in a negative way the digestion, knowing that actually all the spices that we use on their individual basis, all are medicinal. They all have medicinal qualities. We know that cinnamon is a cancer cure, tested many, many years ago by Manchester Hospital. And so every one of these, we value the capsicum qualities in chilies, for example. So all of them have medicinal qualities. And the emphasis here is excessive. Excessive. It's just a common sense thing. And here's why. It goes on to say, you see, ahara rajasasyesta dukkha sukhamaya pradaha. What is the effect? They're productive of pain, grief, and disease. We should try to avoid any food which is productive of pain. Now, some foods we don't think is productive of pain until later. Grief, disease. And it's not just, so in other words, sattvic food is food which is digestible. Rajasic food is food which is a little indigestible. And what about tamasic food, that which is badly cooked, tasteless, putrid, stale, unclean, and left over? In those days, there were no fridges when this was written. But today we have fridges. So you can't take this absolutely literally. Some people say, oh, I've had this food and I can't use it tomorrow because I used it yesterday and I have to throw the whole thing away. No, you misunderstood. You can refrigerate it and it's still fresh. Frozen packed things are still fresh. It's a way of preserving them nicely. So all of these, they are liked by the tamasic person, and the bottom line is the food that makes you feel lazy, lethargic, that is full of production of mucus for a certain type of person. The things that brings your energy down is opposite to the food that brought your energy up, namely sattvic food. It's actually working against the intention of food and eating, just on the basis of taste. Where the Lord of taste is ruling in that person's practical opinion over the Lord, the real Lord who's digesting your food. And again, it's a question of this old choice contained in the Kathopanishad, Bhagavad Gita. You can choose between the preferable and the pleasurable. It's up to you. Make your choice. And we have enough knowledge now about good foods, about nutrition, and so on. It's still down to the individual digestive capacity. But the long and the short of your question really is, which was, does food affect concentration? I think we have enough here to say, absolutely yes. And again, if you sit down to meditate, should you have eaten 15 minutes before, when all the energy of the body is dedicated toward digestion and not toward the energy that is required to mobilize the psychological forces that are necessary for steering the mind toward its origin. And there again, when we talk about concentration, every moment of your day should actually be concentrated. There's a game like that. A game of guiding thought has to be played all the time, assessing what condition is my mind at any given moment. Is it on the lines of sattva, rajas, or tamas? And whichever it is, raise it up to a higher condition, higher condition. How do we control the mind? By doing this, and only by doing this. There's no other way. All the yogas, all the spiritual practices are all designed to elevate the mind from a state of lethargy and inertia to a state of enthusiasm, to a state of purity and illumination. And when the mind is saturated with this purity of mind, and the easiest way is love of God, requiring maybe statistically minimum of 51% sattva and 49% other things, when that condition is arrived at, then you know, you're over the hump, you're over the behavioral conditioning that is necessary to go on and deepen your experience till you get this direct experience. I'm going to pick up some qualities, not just the food, but to do with our topic, the foundations of life. First of all, we have mentioned how when we talk about life, there's a whole range of animate objects that we're talking about. But when we bring it back to its origins, we can legitimately say that the whole universe is infused with pure consciousness. This is a strong version of what we now call in this modern world panpsychism, that there's only one psyche, there's only one mind, that is cosmic mind, and everything in the universe is infused with that consciousness that at its most complex and sophisticated state comes out as human consciousness. And that means that every atom is like that. I was at an unfortunate, or whichever, could be fortunate, could be unfortunate, depending on your point of view, a dialogue at the university here some years ago now. And there was a proponent of atheism who in atheism will view mostly that this world is insentient and somehow appears to be sentient, is one version of it, of materialism or physicalism. There's nothing else in this universe except what we see, and what we see is material, and that material is insentient. Then how do you explain sentiency? How do you explain consciousness at the animal and human level? Can it just arrive there? Does it happen randomly? Or is there something in the very beginning that is expressing itself? And I'm, of course, we're of the opinion that that is the case. And one person in the audience, a student, said, "What, atoms are conscious?" Yes, because the conditioning is that it is not so. Atoms are atoms, and when it comes now to atomic environmental atoms, then we then become anti-environmental. We think the sky is just an open space which we can fill with toxic material. Rivers are there for us to throw plastic in. And the earth is not our mother earth. It's there for our exploitation, and that's it. That's a materialist position. But the more ancient position is, no, and the Celtic tradition is also, and the Oriental position in China, in India, and so on, is this whole world is a vibrant organism vibrating with full sentiency and consciousness, and is there in every single atom, and is evolving, that is unfolding, ultimately to this complex state of humanhood, where we have the capacity to go further, back to our origin, agreeing with the Taittiriya Upanishad that we come from this Supreme, we live in this Supreme and by it, and we dissolve into it. It's the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning, the middle, and the end, all of it. Noticing it is the art of spirituality, or the art of tuning our attention into the glory of the divine. In chapter 7, we have some wonderful clues about this expressed divinity, and also dividing the whole of existence into two categories of the same entity. And this I used in the meditation earlier. So let us see. See, to the human mind, the Lord's power is what we can describe it, what we call energy, life itself. And it appears, of course, as what we call nature. It seems to be one thing, and we seem somehow to exclude ourselves from it. But in Sanskrit, it's called Prakriti, or Prakriti. It's feminine in gender. And it is her lower aspect. And it's her lower aspect that is only visible to our senses and to our sense of interpretation, that is experienced with it, that knows it because of previous inputs that we call experience. So all energies, they're manifesting such experiences, and they flow out, as it were, in waveforms. That's what we have to understand. And these waveforms are called tanmatras. And the fundamental understanding in our Vedanta is to understand that underneath, as it were, the visible waves that we call our universe, that we catch through corresponding senses, are these very subtle tanmatras, these divine waves, these divine elements, these glories that sit behind everything, surfacing as our experience, picked up, no doubt, by modern science in this mysterious way of appearances and disappearances, and how we go from waves to particles. This is a fundamental mystery, unexplained mystery at the most fundamental level of our understanding of the physical world. But you see, these waveforms are rudimentary elements. They're underneath everything. And they bifurcate progressively into all the sense objects and into the corresponding organs that register them. That's a divine arrangement that we have. And these are in order, all sounds, all touches, or we can say all pressures, or colors, or forms, or shapes, or tastes, or smells on the one side, and all organs that catch it. And the organs that catch it, and these evolve into our world of experience. They evolve into the ears that catch the sounds, the skins that catch the pressures, the eyes that catch the forms and the tastes, the forms and the shapes and the colors, or the waves that we label as colors, blue and orange and so on and so forth. These are wavelengths that we catch through the corresponding eyes. And taste buds and noses, all of these. And the technical terms that are used respectively would be Agasha, Vayu, Agni, Apas, Prithivi, but they're helplessly translated as ether, earth, air, fire, water, earth. These are helpless in really understanding what they are. And these elements, they automatically combine and recombine, and in different proportions they do it and draw to each thinker the equivalent of their thoughts. And not only their thoughts, but their resolves, their intentions, their whims, but also their systematic intentions also, and can be mobilized according to these intentions that we have. They produce our environment. That is what we have. And the characteristics of the body and the surroundings, they'll all alter for the better only when our pattern of thoughts start changing. That is spiritual practice. Spiritual practice is when our pattern of thoughts start changing, when we start reforming our habits on the habit level, which is there in the unconscious. We have no direct access to it. We have to cultivate it in the conscious mind. It all began like that. Conscious experience was transferred to a deep, deep library of experience that we call the unconscious. And the components within that we call samskaras. Previous tendencies means previous learning opportunities that were captured, consolidated, and put into our permanent deposit account. And so in that connection, the sense objects must be considered, in a sense, superior to the senses, and then the mind must be superior to that, to the senses, and the intellect is superior to that. There's an order. And since it is for their revelation, corresponding sense organs are molded to catch the sense objects. That's the process. And the impressions are gathered through the five senses, and they're coordinated by a kind of manager, which we call ego, a sense of individuality, without which we can't really manage these things properly. I've heard some Buddhist discussion some time back in a question-answer session. So how do we remove the ego? And unfortunately, the answer wasn't very satisfactory. We don't remove it. We remove the egoism that goes with it. We make the ego an open channel for divine grace to flow through. It's not a crime. It's part of the mechanism. It's a gateway, a useful gateway. And we have to learn the art of transforming a selfish version of it, which is called egoism, into selfless version of it, which is called the pure ego, the manifesting ego, or in Sri Ramakrishna's language, the ripe ego. And so the student must really make their attention penetrate each one of these layers until they arrive at the Lord himself, and then fix your mind on the Lord. That is really concentration. That would really be the fruit of it. And so part of that is to understand that these two things are present. There's a lower nature, aparayam itus tanyam, and then there is a different from it, there's a higher nature. And the indwelling spirit by which the universe is sustained is that higher nature, but the universe itself is that. And we start off by taking an assessment of the universe and seeing the divine glory in there and learning to catch that from any position we like. Because any position will lead us back into there, something like a wheel. Any position on the hub will lead us in through the spokes to the center. And then we can move out again and take another position and move it back in. That is why there are no distractions in meditation, because the whole of nature is covered by one entity. Ishavasham idam sarvam yatkinchit jagat jam jagat. Know that all this is covered by the Lord. So the indwelling spirit by which the universe is sustained is there, but these two really are the womb of all beings, says the Bhagavad Gita. And that one entity is the origin and the dissolution of the entire universe. In a blink it can go. If you want to put it in the language of a child's game, hide and seek. You block your eyes, for you the universe is gone. Children find this game fascinating, endlessly fascinating. This peekaboo, and suddenly you come up. It's hilarious. In adulthood, we can't understand why it's so hilarious. But it's a sudden appearance and disappearance of something which becomes absolutely fascinating and accompanied with a sense of joy and a smile. The child emulates that and goes into fits and fits of laughter. All of a sudden, some face appears and then disappears. Shrieks and shrieks of laughter, uncontrollable. Firstly, we should have that same sense of delight when we view the universe. We should see it as if we are seeing it for the first time. There's a modern trend today. You go to a museum and you see the Rosetta Stone. Instead of seeing it and experiencing it, you rather take a photograph of it and move on. You never really observed it properly. You go to a beautiful place. Ah, what a wonderful sunset. No, let's put it on film. Let's take a photo of it. Now you have photos of it. In doing that, did you really now stand and glory in the glory of the sunset or the sunrise? Did you become part of it? Did you find God in it? Or did you simply take a snap of it and put it in your album? So we need to learn the art of real appreciation of what the senses are experiencing and be able to take that and bring it down, bring it as a point of glory, manifested glory, back to this origin. And if we view the universe as a creator, God as a creation, God is our creator. If we view it as a whole dance, then God becomes a cosmic dancer. If you view this universe as something that is protected, then the Lord becomes a protector. We can view it in any possible way we like, but the art of tuning the mind into the glory of the self is what is necessary in all our activities, in all our thoughts, in all our experiences of this manifested divine universe that seems to be our separate environment, but actually it's the whole of everything. It's the sum totality of existence. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto all.
Guru Magat Swami.
Thank you, Swamiji. Thank you.
Swamiji.
Now here locally, if you still want to tune in, the real talk starts.
So my question came because sometimes in the guided meditation, I can focus and I'm one with the thought. But sometimes my mind keeps on wandering. So I was just wondering why some days it's easy.
So you're wondering easy. Why does the mind wander? Okay.
Yes.
All right.
So I was just wondering what's the difference between the 2 days? In one day in which it flows naturally, and one day it just wanders. And then the work is the same. I have the same kind of things in the work. So that seems to be
so it's quite complex, because if I were to answer the question thoroughly, there are a number of ingredients. Firstly, we have to also be aware of what our biorhythms are saying. There are morning people, there are night people, there are times of the day where our peak activity is there, our energy is at its highest. So that's one factor. Are you getting enough sleep? That's another factor. You see, the whole analysis has to take place. Yes, what type of food, when you eat, and for most people, we have to indulge ourselves in mood creators. But you see, the bulk of your day, how that goes, that will have its effect on how well we meditate. Because in the day we have to deal with all the problems in situ. We have to practice the presence of the divine there and then, as it's there. Not leave it for meditation or leave it for next year. Put it this way, if you're coaching a soccer team and somebody makes a mistake in heading or passing, you don't say, okay, let's correct it next year. No, you take it immediately and you practice immediately. So our outlook on life itself, on our working, waking situation, all our various segments of our environment, social, domestic, work, finance, all of that, we have to insert a sense of sacredness in all of these activities. This is basically called karma yoga. If we're not concentrated in these activities, we can't expect to sit and apply our concentration immediately. And in the meditation workshop that we give 18 mood cultivators. They're not necessarily compulsory for everybody, but sometimes we have to cultivate a mood. It means sometimes we have to orientate the mind in a different way to what has influenced us over the last 8-9 hours. And so music can help, chanting can help, reading can help, verses from the scripture can help. You know, when we go down to Glenstall Abbey, for example, on retreats like that, part of the retreat is engaging in the liturgy which is available, and that is all sung, and people may not understand in Latin what's going on, but that doesn't matter. You know, the very sound of it. The Gregorian chant, for example, Swami Vivekananda felt that there was a close connection between the Vedic chanting and the Gregorian chant that comes out in the West. And so maybe that's a mood cultivator. Lighting, how you light, the ritual that's involved, lighting a lamp, lighting an incense stick, taking time to merely sit. The Buddhist techniques are very useful in this. Simply sitting. I think it was either St. John Vianney, or somebody who he came across in a church sitting for hours and hours at a time. He was curious, what are you doing? He said, I just look at him and he just looks at me. A let go attitude. And depending on our personality, we'll have different disruptions. And that's why in the Enneagram and Essence of Truth on the second weekend, we give prayer, prayerfulness or practice for those who require focused meditation, or those who require quiet prayer, or those who require expressive practice. Because some people are emotionally. I'll give you an example. Supposing you're in a mental state where you are continuously saying, poor me, and assessing all your past life and saying, what a pity, what a pity. And you're engaged continuously in this past practice of bringing feelings, and you're in a state of depression, and somebody says, here's a way of meditating. Meditate on these things, on these feelings and this depression. You know, that kind of meditation will put you into the very pit of depression. It'll exacerbate the depression you already have. So that kind of evaluation will not be suitable for that temperament. And if you cannot concentrate at all, then, and you're a visual person, say, then look at something. Look at an object or a symbol or something like that, and focus on that. And then lead the mind into the subtler varieties, subtler aspects, deeper aspects of that, until meditation becomes easy and natural in doing it. Any attempt to meditate will fail, because meditation has an absence of these two components, first person singular and future tense. There's no such thing as competitive meditation. Sitting there in the presence, taking your time over it, slowing things down, and having a system. Japa is helpful. When we talk about spiritual practice in meditation, We're not talking of meditation alone. We're talking of a combination of japa, prayer, and meditation. And meditation will be difficult without the insertion of these other two components. And meditation till prayer itself becomes the art of sitting in the stillness of divine presence and listening and hearing the sweet voice of the divine come to you. That really is prayer. And japa is repeating lovingly the name of the divine in an inviting way until that becomes meditative itself. If you sit, this is the whole idea of Patanjali putting in asana. It doesn't simply mean sitting, it also means being attentive to your sitting. The Zen Buddhists have a technique before they sit. They acknowledge and salute the seat on which they're going to sit for this prayer, for this most profound experience that they're going to do of meditation. And Zen Buddhism is simply letting go without any judgment or criticism, and just an exercise in awareness, not doing anything. Now that is a way of calming the mind. It's like wiping off a blackboard that has a lot of writing in it, so that you can now put something in. And this stage is called pratyahara, this withdrawal of all the attention from the outside until you have just a blank stage, a blank moment, where you can insert consciously something of your own choice. And a series of that is called concentration. And when that leads only to this one pointedness, this this one pointed steadiness of the mind, where only one thought is present. This really classically is dhyana or meditation. And we getting to that point. And the difficulty people have is they want to get to that point first, without going through all the preparatory things. So take your time. Don't be in a hurry. And don't think you're going to achieve anything that is no longer meditation. That now becomes competitive meditation, competing with yourself even. There's a cartoon like that, Buddhist monks, and they're all starting a starting line, the finish thing, and they're going like that, competitive meditation. No such thing. So we have to come into the present moment. And I always quote Joel Goldsmith's beautiful definition of meditation as a song of gratitude that God is here, God is now, God is love. That itself can be a mantra, you see. An affirmation, God is here, God is now, God is love. What a wonderful phrase. We need to remind ourselves that there's no goal in meditation. Meditation is an expression. Karma yoga is an expression. All the yogas are an expression. There's no sense of, I need to get somewhere. Of course, yes, we have a goal, freedom. To manifest this divinity from within, that is the goal, yes. Post the goal and leave it, and then engage in the process fully. You want to climb Mount Everest, you know what the top is, you know where you're going. But if you're continuously more focused on that, you'll fall into a pit made by an avalanche. Okay, good.